Now is the turn to describe the lungs as the organ of the respiratory system. Now, thing is obvious, but we have two lungs, the right and the left lung. Each lung are quite different just because right in the middle, in the inferior mediastinum, remember, is located the heart, centrally located but tilted slightly to the left. So the right lung consists of three lobes, one, two, three, divided by these deep fissures. We have the horizontal fissure between the superior and the middle lobe, and the oblique fissure between the middle and the inferior right lobe. On the left side, the left lung has only two lobes. Again, there is an indentation in here because of the presence of the heart right in here. There is called the cardiac notch. This indentation in here is called the cardiac notch, and like in here we have our beautiful heart. Okay, so this fissure is called the oblique fissure, just like this one, but this one is on the left side and divides the superior from the inferior left lobe. Now, all of this surface, the external surface of the lung that is in contact with the rib, we call it the costal surface of the lung. Then we have this surface of the lung, and see that I'm marking this and not this. This is the pleura. Well, this inferior aspect rests right on top of the diaphragm muscle, okay? Major muscle of inspiration. Then the superior, because as you can see, it has the shape of the cone. So this superior tip or apex, it goes beyond the first rib. The first rib is about here, and here you will have the manubrium, and here you will have the second rib between the body. Okay, so the important thing is that the apex of the lung projects beyond the first rib. So it actually, this is your clavicle, it can be injuries on this area can actually damage or perforate a lung. The medial side of the lung is facing this area. How do we call this area? The mediastinum. Okay, I'll show you in a little while the mediastinum. The medial side of the lung. But just remembering here that the lungs are within the thoracic cavity, which is all of these. Each lung is, again, remember our gift. So each lung is wrapped by this membrane, which is the pleura, which was described in the first or second chapter. I think it was in the first chapter of this course. We'll go over a little bit in a little while. So each lung occupies each of the pleural cavities, the right and the left pleural cavities. And right in the middle, we have the mediastinum containing the heart, the major blood vessels, the trachea behind the esophagus. I hope we are oriented by now. Look how the medial side or the medial aspect of the lung is. So this is the part that is facing toward the mediastinum. In here, in the medial side, we can see one indentation, which is called the hilum. I think it's spelled like that. Well, in here, we're going to find is where the primary bronchus and the pulmonary arteries get in, and the pulmonary veins with oxygenated blood comes out of the lungs. Okay, that's the hilum. And all of these set of blood vessels and trachea, and also we have the nerves, branches of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. All of that package is called the root. The root. Okay. Another beautiful image to see the lungs. So here the left lung oblique fissure. We can see better here the cardiac notch, superior and inferior left lobe. We cannot see here on the right side the lobes because they have they have placed the ribs in here, so we can see the relationship of the lung with the thoracic wall. So here we have all the ribs. This is rib number one. That's a number one. And see how it projects, the apex of the lung projects above that or superior to the first rib, and it can uh, not be felt, but it projects into the supraclavicular space in here, behind the clavicle. And here we can see that intercostal muscles, there are muscles located in between the ribs. We have two sets, internal and external intercostal muscles, that we will describe just a little bit in the next video when we describe how these muscles are involved with the respiratory movement, ventilation. Okay, now remember I just told you that each lung is occupying a pleural cavity, and a pleural cavity consists of this serous membrane, which is the pleura. And the pleura, remember, is dense irregular connective tissue, has two layers. The outermost layer, which is parietal, I don't have it, oh here, the parietal pleura is, so now follow me, is lining in the internal aspect of the thoracic wall. So the interior aspect of the rib, the internal aspect of this set of muscles, all of that wall is lined by the parietal pleura or the parietal layer. Okay, so it goes all around in here. It lines, or it goes further down the or more inferior to the lung, and lines the diaphragm muscle and all of these lateral aspect of the mediastinum, which is in here, right? And same thing is happening in here. But right here is where we're going to find the root, right? All of these, the bronchi and the blood vessels are coming in and out of the lung. So in that moment, and I'm gonna grab another color, but please see there is the same, I'm gonna follow the same line, okay? This parietal pleura folds in here and is continuous with another layer, which is the visceral pleura. It's not that I'm exaggerating the space, but now this visceral pleura is attached, firmly attached to the outer surface of the lung, okay? That's why it's called visceral. Now, this space between, let's put it in green, this space between the black and blue line, which is between the parietal and the visceral pleura, is called the pleural cavity. And it holds like less than 5 milliliters of serous fluid produced by the cells forming this membrane. And this fluid, it just avoids the friction of these two layers of the parietal and visceral pleura, avoids the friction as we move or inflate and deflate the lungs, okay? Beautiful example they put in your book. When you have your cup of coffee and the saucer on the bottom, if you slice these two, the cup over the saucer, it will create friction. Now, if you put a little film of water in there, you can slide the cup of coffee over this little plate, over the saucer. That's how the fluid, the pleural fluid, acts in the pleural space. It favors the visceral pleura to slide over the parietal pleura, okay, avoiding again the friction. Well, I did not describe that, but let me show it in here. In here, they are taking this part They're zooming in, so we can see this is lung, this is the visceral pleura, this is the parietal pleura lining, this is one transverse section, the transverse section of one rib, and this is the intercostal muscle. So it's lining the internal aspect of the ribs and intercostal muscles. That's the parietal pleura. And right in between this space is the pleural cavity containing the pleural fluid. So that's how lungs look like. Isn't that a pretty picture? So they are wrapped, they're a gift for us, guys. Most of our organs, well, I will say all of them, are a gift from our creators, and they're wrapped in this gift wrapping paper, which is the pleura in this case. So you can see here how the pleura, as I described before, it almost has the same, is wrapping the entire lung, but inferiorly it goes beyond, it's more distal. It leaves a space here in between the lung and the pleura where eventually liquid or fluid can accumulate, and we can discuss that in class as well. We can see through now the horizontal and the oblique fissure on the right lung and the oblique fissure in the left lung. In here, if you maybe easier for you to visualize it in here, we have the lungs. This is the frontal view of the lung, and if you get to peel it, you will open up first the pleural, the parietal pleura, then you see a space. Actually, you cannot, but this is microscopically. So let's imagine that we can peel it out, and then you will see a space, the pleural cavity, filled with that film of liquid, and then the visceral pleura, and then the lung. That's the order of the layers. Of course, the space actually is a virtual space. It does not exist. In reality, it's filled with this pleural fluid. Another image just to understand the same structures. This is the outer parietal pleura lining the wall, okay, the ribs and the muscles, the outer wall of the thoracic cage, and the lateral wall of the mediastinum. And this is the visceral. Remember, it just folds over. It's the same layer, okay, and forms the visceral pleura, which is this layer in here, this one, that is firmly attached and runs inside the fissures and everything, okay? That's the visceral pleura, and this is the lungs. And this is a transverse section that help us also visualize this. Just remind me that I have to tell you one more thing. Hey, not there, here. Okay, pleura, look, this is right through the middle, through where the hilus is located, and the root of is going inside and out of the lungs. So follow me. Let's start with, let's grab a green color to show you the parietal layer, lining all the external, the internal surface of the ribs and intercostal muscles, and in here the lateral wall of the mediastinum. Then we grab another color just to explain this, but understand that it's the same membrane that folds. When we find this root, it just folds to attach firmly into the lung surface. It goes inside the fissures and all, and creates the visceral wall, the visceral pleura. And in between, we can see the virtual space, which is the pleural cavity. Remember also that same thing happens, and we described in the previous chapter, with the pericardium, which is another serous membrane. We have three, remember the three P's: the pleura surrounding the heart, the lungs, the pericardium around the heart, and the peritoneum around some abdominal organs. And here we can see the parietal and the visceral layer of the pericardium. Now, one thing, and I want to go maybe in this, but I'm not sure that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is the further organization of each of the lungs. So we have, first, the entire lung. Okay, let's describe the right. The right lung is divided into three lobes, right? The superior, the middle, and the inferior. Now, each of these um, lobes is subdivided into segments. Okay, the pulmonary segments that can be seen with a naked eye. So don't worry, but in total we have about 10 pulmonary segments in each, in the right and in the left lung. I want you I just wanted to say this because this pattern of segmentation follows the pattern of segmentation of the bronchi. So the primary bronchus is uh, is supplying air to the entire lung. Okay, the secondary bronchi supplies air to each of the lobe and to each of these, and the tertiary bronchi supply air to the segment, the pulmonary segments in each of the lungs. Okay, now in the last video that is coming next, we're going to describe now the ventilation. Okay, how are the skeletal muscles contract and relax in order to move in and out the air from and to our lungs. That's what's coming next.